Initiatives, we included stakeholders in the process to gather feedback and provide detailed input. We hosted a series of 8 feedback sessions that included students, parents, alumni, staff, residents, and community leaders. In addition, a survey was distributed to ETHS students, parents, alumni, and staff via email and was shared with the general public on the school's website. There was difficulty with the link to the staff poll, which will be resolved and released tomorrow. Some significant recurring themes from the survey and feedback session included the following. The panel for tonight's, we'll be talking about them. The panel for tonight's town hall includes 5 district administrators, ETHS Superintendent Eric Witherspoon, and the Assistant Superintendent and Principal, Marcus Campbell. The Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Pete Bavis, also joins us, along with the Associate Principal for Student Services, Taya Kinsey. The district's new Director of Special Education, Deanna Lewis, is also here this evening. Again, my name is Corey Wallace, and I will serve as the moderator for tonight's town hall. We're hosting tonight's virtual event to discuss the fall reopening plan that was released on Friday, July 17th. ETHS stakeholders were invited to submit questions by Monday, July 20th at 9 p.m. Please note some of our housekeeping items for tonight. Not every question will be read. The panel will cover as many topics as possible based on the most commonly asked questions or areas of concern. There will not be a Q&A or chat during the live event, and this event will be recorded for future viewing on the ETHS YouTube channel. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Witherspoon to give a brief overview of the opening plan process.
And good evening, everybody. First of all, I'll just indicate that while we are not anticipating in-person instruction in the next upcoming weeks, we do have masks for all of our students and staff, and so when the day finally comes that we're able to begin phasing that in, I just want everybody to know that you'll all be receiving one of these masks. In the meantime, please wear your mask. So this evening, we really want to just take some time to talk in person about the plan as we now see it. It is called the Reopening Plan, and we thank everybody for not only tuning in, but for your keen and understandable interest in this plan. We know that there are a lot of different opinions. We understand that. We've known that, and it's true all over the country, to be perfectly honest. But I hope what you will be able to see is we have tried our very best to come up with a plan that's going to keep everybody safe and alive at ETHS. One of the things that I think is really worth noting is that we put a lot of time into the plan that we're presenting tonight. And just real quickly, Marcus and I will just review highlights because it has been released and published, and it's clearly available, and I am pretty certain that most of the people listening in have already looked at it quite carefully. You will recall that on July 13th, we had a regularly scheduled board meeting, and at that time, our plan itself was not ready, but it was far along in development, and we wanted to be very transparent and discuss the framework of the plan so that people would have an understanding about what we were working towards, and quite frankly, to give us another week to get input after presenting that at the board meeting so that we could continue to adjust and that plan and factor in that input. We really made a major decision 2 days later on the 15th because of a number of unfolding conditions. We had a lot of staff that were highly fearful of coming in, and that matters hugely to us. But we also learned that there was an outbreak at Lake Zurich High School, and 3 sports teams, 3 sports camps, not their whole student body, had a case that was tested positive. They tested the athletes in just those 3 sports camps, and 36 of them tested positive. That rattled us a lot. About the same time, new research came out about how young people, in particular adolescents, spread the virus. And we also realized that there were just a lot of shifting conditions in the nation. They're still happening, but it was really surging rapidly in those next couple of days. And so we made a decision that the one alteration that we would make is we would not commit to we had committed to e-learning starting August 17th through Labor Day, 3 weeks. And we were saying at the time we intended then to go to in-person or the hybrid model on the day after the Labor Day weekend, and we described that model in depth. What we discovered as we looked at that was we could not commit to that. I mean, this nation is on fire right now, and even though things look really good right here in Evanston at the moment, that's 7 weeks out. We cannot commit to what the conditions are going to be here, and we know what's happening in Iowa, we know what's happening in Indiana, and we know what's happening in Wisconsin. So we made a decision. Caution is the word of the day, and that's what we decided to do. Marcus, you want to talk a little bit more about the plan?
Sure. Thank you, Eric. And thank you to all of you who are watching us tonight. One of the things that is important to know is that we have been spending quite a bit of time in the summer to develop our reopening plan, which consisted of 3 components: remote, hybrid, and in person. So a task force was created to tackle this extremely difficult, complex challenge of addressing all of the what-ifs for remote, hybrid, and in-person instruction. I want to thank, once again, I think I did it on Friday, but I'd like to do it again, thank all of the 100 staff members, teachers, students, administrators, non-instructional staff who served on the subcommittee this summer, as well as our general task force. We will list these names in a scrolling fashion at the end of this live stream. There are a lot of conversations, a lot of complex decisions, and a lot of tough recommendations that were made. Thank you to the 100 people, or close to 100 folks who helped us with this plan. Each of our subcommittees made recommendations, and as Eric just mentioned, a lot of those recommendations really led us to what we could and could not do. And each of these subcommittees that you see here provided a list of recommendations. So we had 5 subcommittees, and that was the Instruction Subcommittee, Student Procedures, Culture and Climate, because that's very important here at ETHS, Materials, Purchasing and Operations, and Staff Procedures. And each of these subcommittees, there were a lot of discussion, and we did not always arrive in the same place, but we did our best to prioritize our efforts, and we are committed to making remote learning work for our students. And part of that process was to listen and to gather feedback from the various people on the subcommittees. And once again, thank you to everybody who devoted a part of your summer to doing that. We really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Dr. Campbell. Well, we did a reopening, as part of the reopening plan, we sent out 2 polls, a student and guardian poll that was opened on June 30th and a staff poll on July 13th. Poll results were shared. Corey has already talked about the tech issue with the staff poll. But, we've listened to feedback, multiple perspectives, and we'll continue to do that. But, we quickly realized that the student guardian poll was outdated very soon after it was sent out. It was clear that students and families want to return to normalcy. That was clear. But also there were many concerns that needed to be addressed. In the meantime, the environment was changing and continues to change, as Dr. Witherspoon talked us through. And we were learning from our colleagues throughout the state and across the nation in this ever-shifting landscape. And those poll results would shift again and again and again with every iteration of those.
Along with those changes, similarly, ETHS staff expressed concerns when polled about returning to work, and our commitment remains to continue to gather multiple perspectives as we move forward.
So with the poll conclusions, we want all of our Wildkits to return back to school. The guidance continues to change rapidly, and we know families have expressed concern about returning to the building since the poll was sent out. Teachers and staff have many concerns about the quality of instruction and how the remote learning is impacted by just not being in the building. As previously stated, this town hall is an opportunity to share results of the 2 polls that were conducted during the planning process. We were planning for both hybrid and remote learning options, as Dr. Campbell expressed, but because we wanted to make sure we had all the information for all the pieces. We wanted our students to come back to school, but after reviewing the necessary steps to deal with the inevitable, we can, which include contracting, contact tracing and quarantines, and the consistent interruptions and shutdowns that will follow. It was determined we at ETHS do not want to compromise the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff, or reduce the high academic expectations we have, or take away any of the positive social experiences we want our students to have, which are some of the reasons why we are starting remotely in August in an enhanced e-learning environment. Because of this, we want to take some time to address some of the questions and concerns that have been brought and submitted to us in this town hall event.
So during the remaining time, the ETHS panel will cover a number of topics. And since there were more than 300 questions submitted, obviously we will not be able to cover all of them, but ETHS looked for the themes to cover as much as possible.
So factors in making our decisions, and those were equity, health and safety precautions, social and emotional well-being, academic and instructional strategies and outcomes, and our infrastructure needs. So these were the components that go into or that drive our decisions in discussing our reopening planning and our process.
So tonight, we're going to discuss the main topics that showed up in the town hall submissions, which include metrics, special education, IEPs and 504s, academic experience and supports, quality of instruction, curriculum and grading, scheduling and courses, social emotional well-being, technology, and communication. We could clearly spend an entire evening on one of these topics, but we will touch on the high-level pieces to provide clarity.
So what is the district's plan to resume in-person learning, and what metrics are used for the basis of the decision? Evanston's 7-day positivity rate has been below 2% for 14 days, so how much lower must it be?
So I'll take that one. First of all, we know that we're going to have to monitor the situation constantly from today going forward, even before today going forward. But we're definitely going to continue looking closely in the next 7 or so weeks as we get the e-learning started and as we start to take a look at what's realistic here. Quite frankly, we're going to watch all of the metrics that are already out there and reported for our region and for our state all the time. Things like transmission rate, percentage transmission, hospitalizations, deaths, all of the things that clearly give us an idea about what is happening with this virus around us. We are, though, going to be very cognizant of the fact that we have a lot of people who work in this building who come from a distance. We have employees who come from Wisconsin. We have employees who come from Indiana. We have employees who come from the whole wider area. So we're not talking only about Evanston. We're talking about, where are people coming from, what's going on in their communities, and what might be brought into this school. We will definitely continue to monitor the advice of the State Board of Education, the CDC, the Illinois Department of Public Health, and the other guidance that is being offered. And we will, quite frankly, continue to develop those metrics. We haven't fully developed them yet. And one of the reasons is we are starting e-learning on August 17th. We have 3 weeks of that. We know we're not coming in immediately after Labor Day weekend. And so we have time to continue to follow the research and follow the metrics that are out there at the moment. And we definitely have to assess what is the risk of transmission, not only from student to student or adult to adult, but from student to adult. And believe me, that matters for people who say, well, it doesn't affect young people that badly. Well, first of all, we know that from the research, and we'll get to it again in a minute, adolescents do get the disease and have the same kind of transmission as do adults. And there is some speculation in some of the research that adolescents actually might even be more infectious in transmitting the disease. Not sure, I'm not claiming to be a medical expert, but we're going to be watching that, because we have to understand that if that's transmitted to anybody who takes it home to their family, if that's transmitted to an adult in this building who has underlying conditions, we are going to see people at great risk. And I will tell you now, I will not knowingly do that under my watch.
Thank you. Regarding 504 and special education, what are you doing for the students with IEPs and for the students with 504s?
So every IEP student will have an individual remote plan, an IRP, created by their case manager as an addendum to their current IEP. The creation of this document will be in partnership with your family to specifically address and align the IEP needs for students in a remote setting. Students in special education will receive all related services and accommodations as outlined in their IEP. With the enhanced e-learning schedule, students will have contact with their learning strategies case manager at least every other day. This contact will help facilitate the support each student needs as aligned in their IEPs with their goals and to meet their accommodations. Students will continue to get all services as outlined in their IEPs. Students with 504 plans will remain in place, their 504 plans will remain in place, and their accommodations will be provided as outlined in these plans. When needed, 504 teams will adjust accommodations for an e-learning or hybrid situation, but teachers will focus on the importance, relationship development, and feedback as part of their instruction, including in the e-learning and hybrid environments.
Thank you. In terms of academic experience and supports, what happens if kids struggle to remain engaged with e-learning? And will students have any opportunities, designated times to meet with staff one-on-one in person or online if they need support outside of the class time?
So we're really focusing on a wraparound perspective. We are prepared to engage students in e-learning on many different levels, starting with teachers, but that also expands beyond teachers to think about support and problem solving with social workers, counselors, psychologists, truancy officers, our deans, and then wrapping our support early and frequently. Even before school starts, we have plans to engage families and students, and we're thinking about how we engage everyone, and that includes support staff to teachers to our leaders.
And I'll add to that, Ty. I said the questions, that question raises an issue that is important to us as to why we built AM support and office hours in our Monday schedule so that students can access supports outside of class time and into our schedule. So that's why we did that for the Mondays.
Thank you. In terms of the quality of instruction, how will ETHS achieve consistency between teachers and how classes are scheduled and taught remotely?
Thanks, Corey. So, one of the things we learned from the spring is that our students, families, and staff need consistency. We know that, and we now have that, actually. We have consistency in our bi-period bell schedule and in the requirement that there be an element of live instruction each period. Now, that doesn't mean that it's 70 minutes of Zooming. That, from my experience in going to a lot of Zoom meetings, wouldn't be appropriate. But you can expect to have some Zooming every day in your academic classes. And, I just also want to stress that while consistency is important, it's also important to remember that each of our teachers has a unique strength. And we want to honor those strengths, those individual strengths. It's part of what makes ETHS special when we're here in person, and we look to really develop that in the enhanced e-learning as well. To the second question, our department chairs, our very, very talented ed tech team, and our instructional coaches are here to support our teachers in providing quality e-learning instruction. So they're going to be providing supports for those folks in real time as circumstances arise. That said, communication is so very important. In fact, I would say it's even more important in a remote learning, in an e-learning environment. And if there are any issues or concerns around implementation, tech issues, whatever it is, please don't hesitate to contact the teacher and the department chair. Let us know what's going on so we can be fully responsive. Thanks.
Thank you. In terms of curriculum and grading, would you please describe the measures that teachers are taking now to master e-learning tools and revamp their curriculum? And how is the district supporting training for remote teaching, as well as how is grading going to be implemented?
Sure. You know, we're fortunate, and I spoke about this in the last question. We have an amazing ed tech team. They've been instrumental in preparing our teachers for e-learning. We have a required summer e-learning academy for our teachers, and they're learning the best practices which are supported by research and guided by our experiences with e-learning in the spring, as well, let me just say, crisis learning in the spring, as well as e-learning in summer school. So the Summer Academy covers 6 very, very important areas: classroom climate, planning, delivering content, discussion, assessment, and feedback. The Academy is also designed to model how teachers can use Google Classroom, use various different tech tools, including video, to teach online, while also giving them a glimpse into the student experience. Because the neat thing is they're experiencing this course as students prior to the start of the school year. And you know, to the grading point, while a return to grading is important, it's equally important to remember that we're in the midst of a pandemic. That said, returning to traditional grading scale communicates that we are returning to school. It's incredibly different than the spring. We're going to return to a A through F grading scale, but more importantly, in this environment, quality, timely feedback is a critical part of learning. Grading is essential, and feedback is essential. It's what families and students know. It also allows us to monitor and support our teachers and students and determine how best to serve them. So we'll be looking at that data, making adjustments. Our teachers will be reflecting on that. And the nicest thing is that that is linked directly into the e-learning academy our teachers are participating in this summer.
Thank you. This next question comes from a student perspective. So I'm a student at ETHS, and I'm worried that I won't get enough from high school to be ready for college because of the pandemic. Should we be learning outside of school?
So Wildkits, you're not alone. Students across the country are sharing this exact same concern and feeling when it comes to remote and e-learning and hybrid situations. But the interesting thing about this is high schools are not the only ones changing their instructional models, but colleges and universities are as well. While we're in the middle of this pandemic, we know that, please know, that ETHS is going to do its very best to provide an exceptional education to you to prepare you for college and your post-secondary options. That said, we have always had students who have sought different learning experiences beyond ETHS to explore and build on their unique interests, and we encourage you to continue to do that through this process.
Thank you. In terms of scheduling and courses, can students have the opportunity to change their schedules in light of the online-only classroom and classes, and when will the class schedules be distributed?
So to answer the last question first, schedules will be available via HAC, which is our Home Access Center, as of August 9th in the evening. And we are very committed to engaging all of our students via e-learning, hybrid or in-person instruction in the classes that they carefully requested and poured through decision-making with their family members, with their teachers, with their counselors, and we're committed to that and supporting that process. Courses and schedules cannot be changed and will remain in place. And this is especially important when we consider the factors of transitioning to a different learning model. In addition, we do have our orientation for our class of 2024 that we're looking forward to, which is going to be our virtual orientation on August 10th and 11th.
So social emotional well-being is obviously very important at this time. So how will teachers get to know their students? Without any time on campus, how will students feel known by and accountable to and motivated by their teachers? Another question is, I have serious concerns about the isolation of our children by not being in school and the mental health effects. So if you could speak to that, please.
Thank you for raising the issue. It's important to me, and I think it's important to everybody at this table and at ETHS. And while it is important for students and teachers to get to know each other during the regular school year, and given the fact that we are entering this critically important time being remote, it's more important that we work really hard to establish these relationships with students remotely. So a part of that, what we've done, we have dedicated a part of our e-learning academy and preparing teachers to making these kinds of connections in our e-learning environment. We also are spending the summer developing a toolkit to build social emotional learning into an e-learning environment. This is a part of what we were doing before the pandemic hit. It's been a part of our work during our crisis in the spring, and it is definitely going to be a part of our work going forward. Taya?
So to address the second question, I want to just pause for a moment, because we know that not being together has brought many of us, frankly, to tears at times, because we are pulled to be together in person, and this is very hard. We also know that we are truly in this together as a Wildkit family, and we're dedicated to understand how we can thrive together in e-learning. Getting connected starts in the classroom, where teachers will be infusing the social emotional learning and building community, but we also recognize that some students may struggle, and we are prepared to help. We will be providing lessons and trainings on how to cope with our feelings, including frustration around isolation, depression, anxiety, and how to build our resilience. We will be providing social work services and group interventions, support groups, and support from our new mindfulness coaches to help students and staff engage in mindfulness. And we will be teaching students how to ask for help, just to name a few examples of how we can help with the isolation. As we help each other move through this, we can remember that this is real and this is intense right now. And we can remind each other that together we can get to the other side and lean on each other. A huge piece of leaning on each other will include, for our students, our grade level team members, including our nurses, our psychologists, our social workers, our counselors, and our deans, all of whom hold the social emotional well-being as well as physical well-being and instruction at the center of what they do. Practicing acknowledge, care, tell is a way that we can all embrace showing we care about each other, each of us, asking for help and helping others when they need support. And again, that means all of us as classmates, as parents, and as staff. And our commitment remains to staff and student well-being. Our next slide is about the Wildkit welcome for the class of 2024. Moving on to a layer of excitement that we are looking forward to welcoming our students through a virtual orientation and materials pickup on August 10th and 11th. Staff for the class of 2024, there have been a lot of questions around how will my new freshmen develop relationships, and how will they develop relationships with teachers as well as with students. Our staff are really dedicated to developing those relationships through e-learning, both with the staff and with classmates. So even before we begin the school year, we have begun an opportunity for incoming freshmen to develop connections to ETHS. So as you can see on the slide, the Wildkit Welcome is a web page that you can visit for weekly activities, for remote extracurricular activities even during the summer, and to be able to ask a student ambassador a question. And we encourage all families to continue to review the new student web page for updates.
Thank you. In terms of technology to access what you just talked about, do all students have equal access to internet and technology, and how can students whose Chromebooks aren't working properly get the technical help that they need?
Thank you. All ETHS students are given access to a computer via the One-to-One Digital Learning Initiative. All students have access to mobile hotspots if they have low or no functioning internet access at home. All students have access to technical support, including loaner devices, should they experience issues with their district-issued Chromebooks. Additionally, all students have access to the same ed tech software tools, including G Suite and Education and Home Access Center. The Chrome Zone will be operating during remote learning. The center has established protocols and used these during the summer and spring during the remote learning periods. Students can receive technical support on their Chromebooks by emailing chromsupport@eths202.org or calling 847-424-7357. If a loaner is needed, a confirmation will be sent to the student arranging a device swap at entrance number 2. We recognize that this is so important because of the platform that we're going to with remote learning, so we want students to be able to know that they have the support they need with their technology.
Thank you. When it comes to communication, is there clarifying language of what synchronous versus asynchronous learning means? And how much advance notice will we receive if we move to in-person or hybrid learning?
So synchronous learning means classes taking place at a specific time for all students, virtually or in person. Asynchronous learning means students complete assignments and class activities on their own time. The remote learning schedule includes both synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities.
And we understand the need for everyone to want to plan. So as Dr. Witherspoon mentioned earlier, we're just going to be monitoring conditions as they arise. And we will give advance notice about 10 days if there is a shift. But please know that we will be monitoring conditions, and people will have advance notice to be able to plan for whatever context and situation we find ourselves in. So please be flexible and adaptable and work with us during this time.
Thank you, everyone. So this concludes the question and answer portion of this town hall, and we'll now have some time for some closing thoughts.
So let me continue with the script that we have, and we have a few more things to say. And then I'm going to simply remove myself from the script and talk to all of you from my heart. And colleagues, I'm going to give you an opportunity as well, because we are all deeply invested in this, as so many other people are, and we spend a lot of time together remotely, and we and like so many other people in this district and actually in this nation, we're pouring our hearts into trying to figure out how to get this right. I do want to mention, though, and I think this is important to know before I get into to some of the thoughts I have. When we do eventually go to the hybrid model, some form of in-person, students and parents, it's not going to be the school that you want it to be. I know that e-learning may not be the school that any of us want it to be, but I can tell you it will not be the school we want it to be, even when we go to the alternating hybrid model that we have already developed and we outlined last Monday on June 13th at the board meeting. Everybody will be required to wear face coverings at all times, except when they are eating. There will be no gatherings of more than 50 people in any space, and that would only be in a space that would allow for the 6 feet apart social distancing. So even in the largest space we have, no more than 50 people, all 6 feet apart, which we are tonight. I know sometimes dimensions on TV can be a little or on a screen can be a little misleading, but we are at 6 feet tables and we're in the middle, and there's 3 feet and 3 feet or more on every side of us. And that will be the way that ETHS will work. We will have to have some kind of self-screening process we'll require of everybody so that they will verify every day that they do not have any of the symptoms that will be asked about and listed, and that they do not have a fever. But we know that that's not even enough yet. We know that we won't be able to allow visitors in the building except in extreme situations. And that'll all be prearranged, and they will have to follow specific guidelines. Students will be assigned seats in every place they go in the building. You move to a place, you go to your assigned seat. And we're going to have that for contact tracing, because we have to know where you've been and where you've moved and where you've sat. There will be no furniture in the lobby or the hallways or in any of the general areas. The only furniture will be seats that people are assigned to. The cafeteria, as we know it, no more. There will be more than just the normal 4 cafeterias, so that people can be 6 feet apart. They will have to not be if they're eating, they can't be carrying on conversations because they're unmasked. And so they will have to eat silently, and they will have to eat in the same assigned place every single day. Hallways will be one way. And students will have to be spaced, and everything will be marked at 6-foot intervals everywhere they go.
Don't forget the cold lunches.
The lunches will have to be cold. There is no way that we can nutrition services can prepare meals, but we can't put them at risk of hundreds of people filing past them every day. So there will be cold lunches, and people will have an assignment of how to go and to get those cold lunches. They will, you will report to school in the morning on the days that it's your rotation, and you will leave at the end of the day when it's over. There will be no lingering around this school. And if you are in an activity that we are sponsoring, you will have to go directly to that activity and again follow all the guidelines that I am mentioning right now. It's just that simple. Groups of students will not be able to gather and have social conversations. Because again, we didn't make this up. These are the guidelines that the Illinois State Board of Education have issued to us. It's a 60-page document. You can find it. It's the Illinois State Board of Education. It's a 60-page document with all of these requirements in it. And frankly, we are going to follow them. We will not do something frivolously, and we will not in any way take chances. Your teacher will be in the front of the room, at least 6 feet away from the people in the front of the room, and will not be mixing around the room. You will learn on day 1 how you file into the class and how you file out of the class. And I'm telling you this for this reason. We are in a pandemic. This is a once-in-a-100-year event. And all of these are recommendations as we speak of the State Board of Education, the CDC, and the Illinois Department of Public Health. We're not making this stuff up. What we know is that we're going to have to follow that so that we don't endanger people. Marcus, you want to talk a little bit more about what we'll be offering at the school? And Deanna, you have a little bit there, Pete, and once we wrap that up, I'm going to come back and say a few more things.
Thank you. Yes, as Dr. Witherspoon pointed out, this is not the ETHS that none of us have ever seen or known. And it's difficult. And even if we get to a hybrid scenario, our mental health component, which we're definitely still committed to doing, we cannot do that. Given the office space limitations for our counselors and our social workers and our psychologists, the CDC guidelines and the Illinois Department of Public Health, and the 64-page document that Dr. Witherspoon has just mentioned, they just can't allow for that. So we would have to offer our mental health services remotely, even in a hybrid scenario.
As much as ETHS students want to come back to our beloved building, we realize we are keeping students apart rather than bring them together. Our common spaces will be very empty, and students will not be able to socialize with each other or even be able to pass each other in the hallways the way they're used to. I'm going to deviate a little bit from the script too for a second, just as a new member of the Wildkit family and just working with this incredible staff. I have to say, like ETHS family, you could not imagine the amount of commitment and dedication, not just administrators, but teachers, but everyone who graces these hallways in a pandemic, not in a pandemic, has to you as ETHS family members, not just students, but the extended family, parents and cousins, and just Evanston in general. We are holistically committed to serving you as individuals, you as families, and if there's anything that we can do to help you through that process, do not hesitate to reach out to any of us, because we will do what we have to do to support you through this. We're all in this together, and we're going to make it through as an ETHS family.
All right, let me take this mask off, because it's really difficult to have an hour-long session with a mask on, let alone all day, although we're prepared to do that because that's what the pandemic dictates. Up on the slide, you'll see, with the X, there's a red X in the upper left-hand corner. That's the school I know and love. That's the school of kids getting together, kids socializing. My daughter went here, graduated. I have a rising junior, and I've been here for a while, quite a while. And just when I look at the picture in the middle, which is what a classroom will look like following our guidelines, and I see the desks facing forward, and then I see the desks in the larger space facing in one direction, I think about how stunningly isolated an experience this high school, which prides itself on connections and making each connection count and welcoming, and just how the value add of ETHS is ETHS and the ETHS experience. The pictures up there on the right-hand side and in the middle, they're not that. That's something frightening. That's something that reminds me of pedagogy and instruction, I don't know, pre-John Dewey. I mean, you're locked in a room and you're facing forward, and you can't talk, and you can't socialize, and you can't group work, and you can't do the experiential things that we so associate, and the innovative things we've done as a high school. But let me say, it's also an opportunity here. And that opportunity has to do with what we're going to deliver in our e-learning environment. Our teachers have worked extraordinarily hard all summer. They worked hard during crisis learning in the spring, where we pivoted within a weekend to what we did. And we learned from that. We had some great instructional experiences and some not so great experiences, and we learned. In summer school, we took stock, we added some guidelines, and it was a better experience. We continue to learn and develop and evolve. In those e-learning environments, in the enhanced e-learning environment, we can build community and will build community, and we can capture much of that. We can recapture much of what it means to be a Wildkit. If that wasn't the case, I would be addressing everyone in a much bleaker way. But I'm upbeat about that because I know with constraints comes creativity and power, and I think we're going to make this work for our students, families, and staff. Yeah, that's where my head is. Thanks.
So I wanted to share a little bit along the lines of differences for Wildkits. One of the things that what I believe will not be different about our experience is the fact that we come together through problem solving, through challenging times a lot. We've never been through a crisis like this, but we have been through crises, and we have continued to come together. And I believe strongly in our staff and in our students. Our staff did an amazing job, even through all this summer, through the planning, through the spring, even before now, and our students too. We are so lucky. I was at a meeting last night, and we were talking about all the challenges that we've been through, and all of what emerged was the good things. about ETHS and about our Wildkit family and about the fact that we value student voice so much, that we value staff voice, and that sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't, but that when we don't, we have to problem solve together. So what I wanted to add was that when we're thinking about the differences for Wildkits, I'm confident that we can figure out how to do this and support each other in the right way, especially if we follow the quote of use your voice even when it shakes. And that means telling us when it's working, telling us when it's not working, letting us know how to problem solve, and pausing, bringing compassion, all of us together, because all of those things are real.
Thank you, Taya. I have to, if those of you who are familiar with the Courageous Conversation Protocol, I must say that I'm in my feeling quadrant. I have been in my feeling quadrant for quite some time. Dr. Lewis referenced this in her comments, is that in the hybrid scenario, our work is not to bring students together, but to keep them apart. That is counterintuitive to everything that we believe about being educators. And it's very difficult to think about. It's difficult to wrap my head around. But that would be the scenario that we would be facing, not bringing folks together, but keeping everyone apart. And so I just want to continue to thank our staff and our students and the Evanston community for your continued patience throughout this time. There are a number of districts who are trying to figure this out, and it's a tough landscape to navigate. And we have a strong group of people who have strong hearts, who are committed to equity, who are committed to E-Town and all of what that means in the orange and blue. And we're going to get through this together and figure this out. As I mentioned to the staff on Friday, we still have some very tough days ahead. And it's going to be important that we, as Taya mentioned, use our voice even when it shakes, continue to believe the best of one another, and to really work to problem solve. Because it's absolutely critical and it's absolutely necessary. You can read the slide that's on your screen that simply suggests that the risk and the restrictions for hybrid just don't benefit student learning at this time, which is why we're not going to do it. But I just want to say thank you to the E-Town family for once again your continued patience, your support. Thank you to all of the teachers who've been reaching out saying, hey, I want to help brainstorm, let's think through this. Say, yeah, we got you. We'll be doing that. And a lot of our staff have done that. And you weren't on the task force, so sure, we can take definitely a few more members who want to help us to think through this. So thank you for all of that. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to turn this over back to Dr. Witherspoon.
Yeah, thank you to all of you. I have enough interaction with them on such a regular basis that I just hear their hearts and their voices when they once again articulate where they are right now. I'm going to speak very personally for a few minutes, if I may. What has happened to this country, to this region, and to ETHS breaks my heart. I know it's caused by a virus that, you know, you want to blame somebody. You want to blame something. Well, we can blame the virus, but you know, where does that get us? I mean, that is what has caused this. But there's nothing to lash out at. There's nothing to argue down, because this virus will respond as it's going to respond, and human emotions aren't going to change it. But it doesn't change the fact that we have emotions. I just do find it heartbreaking. Anybody who knows me and has been around me here knows that, first of all, I just love our students, and I love having all of our faculty and staff here. I love being out and about and greeting everybody and high-fiving and fist bumping and handshaking and when it is welcomed, a quick and appropriate hug. Stopping to get photographs with different students, just all the things we do, being in the cafeterias and interacting and the little joking and teasing that goes on among the students and this adult who's in the cafeterias all the time. Going to the ball games, going to the events, seeing our students who are, whether it's in athletics or some kind of a club activity or in the arts, whatever it may be, just pouring their hearts into what they do. The idea that we're not going to have YAMO this fall. We have announced that we're pushing the date back to the spring, hoping against all hope right now that the situation will change, that there'll be a vaccine, and we'll be able to do it. But right now, the warnings we have about people in close proximity without masks and singing is literally life-threatening. And so the very things that we do that enrich our lives and enhance our lives and make the Wildkit experience, they're not going to happen now. And I know in some of this we painted a little bit of a bleak picture, but we painted an accurate picture. We can't mislead you. We can't lead you along like we have enough control over this pandemic that we have the power to change these things. And I can only imagine all of you, whether you're teachers and staff, whether you're parents, whether you are our students, whether you're community members. I can't even imagine all the emotions you've gone through and are going through. Some of you are listening into this tonight and you're angry. And you're probably angry at us because you want to be angry at something. You want to be angry at somebody. And you're feeling this emotion, and the virus isn't going to listen to you. Some of you are feeling down and despondent. Some of you are feeling courageous and ready to do whatever's asked of you. Some of you are worried about yourselves. Some of you are worried about family members. And some of you, in the world of being a teenager, aren't worried a bit. And we know that. But I want to give you a few ideas. Students and staff, you can do a lot to help us get to a point that we can start at least trying the in-person, the hybrid, and hopefully have it evolve to a point that it gradually becomes more of what we would only hope ETHS can be. But here's what you have to be doing right now. You have to be following the CDC and the Department of Public Health guidelines. You must be doing this. You must be wearing your masks. And the kind of irony about a mask is the person who refuses to wear it and says, nobody can make me wear a mask. They're not endangering themselves. They're endangering us. I wear a mask to protect you. I keep from infecting the air to a great degree. You wear a mask to protect me and to not infect the air around me. So even though I'm wearing a mask, I'm not protected against you. And you really need to understand that, students. You really need to, and social distancing. Let me go back to that Lake Zurich thing. 36 students at only 3 sports camps. And when they did the contact tracing, guess what they found out? They all got it at social events in their community leading up to it. They could track every one of those infections to a couple, 3 social events that teenagers were attending in their community prior to the incubation time. We'll not be a well community. And we're doing well right now, by the way. But we will not be a well community if we don't all do our part. So students and staff, because our staff is spread out for dozens of miles. Please follow the guidelines. When we are able to start to move to a hybrid, we have to have all done what we must do to know that we're not going to bring it in. Because once an infection starts to be transmitted in an indoor environment like this, and remember, we're talking about bringing in 950 students at a time. May not sound like a lot compared to the size of the district, but then you got to add at least 500 staff members that would need to be in here at the same time. Somewhere in the range of 1,500 people under one roof. If somebody brings it in, we don't have any guarantees that something might happen, that it might start to spread and people might start to take it home. So please, students and families, please do your part. Everything we do now, the remainder of the summer, is going to drive down the infectious rate even more. I know it's very low right now in Evanston, but we don't have walls around this city. And we know that it's not low as you start to travel away from here. And we don't know when somebody from a neighboring state, much less coming into O'Hare, will come into this community, because we aren't stopping interstate travel in this country. And we don't know when the next person might bring it into this community. What we do know is if we follow the guidelines that I'm really asking you to follow, we can still control it. And we can still be a healthy community. And we can gradually get back to the kind of world that we want to be in, not only at Evanston, but at ETHS. We are Wildkits. We care about each other. We love each other. Not one of us wants to infect or hurt another one of us. Not one of us, and I know that. But we all have to realize we bear a personal responsibility, and it's the only way we're going to be able to make progress on this. And we thank you. We thank you for tuning in. We thank you for your support. We thank you for when it's not as much of support as a critique, but because we need all of that. We thank you for your input, whether it's easy input to hear or difficult input to hear, we need to know it. And I thank you for what you've done so far, but I thank you in advance for doing what we need to do as a Wildkit family to get back to the ETHS we love. And I can say it today, but I want to be able to shout it out loud and clear in coming weeks and months and remind us that it's a great day to be a Wildkit, even in the worst of times. Thank you, everybody.
And that concludes tonight's town hall. Thank you all, and have a good evening.